Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Sopiarz-Rianda. I hope this video finds you well. I also hope that you enjoyed your 3-day weekend with MLK Day off on Monday. Also, I hope you appreciated the holiday just a little bit more because of the fact that we are studying Martin Luther King as an influential figure in our research in Unit 5. So what we're doing this week, we're going to taper down a little bit just because we did have that 1-day holiday. So all the work that we're doing in this session is really 4 days, not 5 days. And you can see right here that session 2 is due on the 26th, by the 26th, before midnight. So what we do, we click on Unit 5, Reading Like a Researcher. And in session 1, we started the research process. And the way we did that is we looked at primary sources, we looked at secondary sources, we talked about the differences between the two. Remember, a primary source is a source that is written by or created by a particular person in this case. So in session 1, we watched a excerpt from a television interview by Martin Luther King. So that was our primary resource. Secondary resources are all the resources that you find that are written about that particular television program. So you saw it firsthand. That was a primary source. But secondary sources are what people have already written about that primary source. So that's the big difference between primary and secondary sources. So what we're doing this week, we're continuing that process of reading like a research, because remember, everything that we're doing in this unit is modeling what you will be doing in Unit 6. So all of these evaluations, all these steps that we are doing in Session 1 and Session 2 and Session 3 is what you are going to be doing on your own in Unit 6. So it's really important that you understand and go through that process in this unit. So in this session, we're going to continue our study of MLK while along the way learning some strategies for some note-taking, finding valuable sources, and evaluating an author's viewpoint. Now, last week, you already touched on this. You did an assignment on note-taking using Cornell note-taking methods. And in this session, I'm going to be giving you some more strategies that you can choose to use for note-taking purposes. Okay? So here's some important announcements. As you already know, we had Monday off, and I hope you enjoyed it. Also, as always, we do have that weekly help session on Wednesday at 11 o'clock. All you have to do is click on that link, and it's basically a question and answer format. If you have questions and you want to talk to me live, that's the place to do it. But if you have a question and it's burning a hole in your pocket, don't need to wait till Wednesday at 11 o'clock. I'm always accessible to you Monday through Friday. Just shoot me a text, message, email. I'll always get back to you within 24 hours. Here's a list of all of our assignments that are due, as well as that suggested schedule. I highly recommend that you follow this suggested schedule. Like I think I said in last week's video, a lot of the feedback that I was getting from your goal setting for semester 2 was time management, organization skills. This is a tool that I would highly suggest that you use, one tool that you can use to help you organize your time, daily goals. So please use it. I have found that the students that actually do follow a suggested schedule are much more successful. So click on Next, as always. And here you're going to find some essential questions. So these are questions that you can refer to and consider that this is what we're doing in this session. So this is what you can expect. Questions to think about as you are completing these assignments. What is really the takeaway from these assignments? So this is where you would find those essential questions on your learning in this session. Okay, so for the first activity this week, we're going to be reviewing criteria for good sources. Now, there are an amazing amount of volume and information out there, and it's all accessible at your fingertips. It's quite amazing. But we can find almost anything that you want to about any topic. The trouble is that there's a lot of information in cyberspace, and it can be really difficult and overwhelming to find the information that you really need, information that's helpful, high quality. So this assignment is just going to help you, for those students who are feeling a little overwhelmed, even if you're not feeling overwhelmed, on a way to evaluate whether a source is a high quality source. And I thought you'd get a giggle out of this acronym, because you don't want a crappy source. You don't want a crap source. So this acronym is all the things that you should look for in a source in your research, okay? And so be sure to watch this video. It walks you through a crap source. Sorry, I have to giggle. So be sure that you watch that video on the left, and it will help you go through the criteria and to ensure that you're choosing good sources for your research. Also, here are two fantastic articles, especially this one, Searching the Web. It's a little lengthy. It's about 9-10 pages. Don't let that scare you off. It is so jammed packed with fantastic information about ways to conduct research on the web. So be sure to evaluate one of these two websites and review it and think about how to conduct a successful search on the internet. Here you're going to be putting that internet search to, you're basically going to be practicing it. You're going to be applying what you just learned in the previous screen. So finding a good source is the first step, and that's what I wanted to help you do in the assignment before this. So now the next step is to review those sources and take good notes. So once you find a source, you need to take notes on the most important information. And there are a lot of different note-taking techniques that you can use at different times. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at this article right here. It's called 5 Note-Taking Methods. And think about which one that you would use in different situations. You'll also find these 2 templates, and you use that one in session 1 for note-taking techniques. What you need to do is bookmark or save all of these documents somewhere on your computer, because you're going to be using them on for the next assignment. So now that you've considered what makes a good source and different ways to take notes, it's time to apply that knowledge in finding some new sources about Martin Luther King. So in this assignment, you're going to explore these 2 databases. And what you're going to do is you're going to sift through these 2 amazing collections of primary and secondary sources. And your task is to search and find 2 sources, primary or secondary, doesn't matter, that you feel are worthy. So if you are actually writing a paper on Martin Luther King, these are the sources you think are the most interesting and relevant. And remember, that core research question is, why is Martin Luther King still influential today? So that's the question, the research question you are going to be keeping and thinking about as you are selecting your sources. For each source, remember, you're going to be finding 2 sources. For each source, you're going to record the name and explain in 3 to 5 sentences why you think it's a worthwhile source. And then you're going to be taking notes using one of these methods from the previous screen. And then finally, you're going to explain why the note-taking method you chose is the best one for this source. Remember that down here is an example, and you will be completing this entire process 1 through 5 twice. You're going to be finding 2 sources, and you're going to be going through the process 1 through 4 twice. And down here is an example of this assignment and what I will be looking for in your note-taking, so please be sure to review that. It's super helpful. And then you'll submit that here. And then the second assignment this week, it's really important to evaluate a source and taking notes on it. Another thing you'll want to consider is who the author of that article is and how his or her viewpoints might bias his argument. Okay, so what you're going to read is this letter down here. It's a letter from Anne Lincoln to Martin Luther King. And you might find it a really interesting article on Martin Luther King, and it seems well thought out and rational. The author makes an argument that Martin Luther King's ideas are dangerous, and that's probably a fair argument. However, upon reading further, you discover that the author was a high-ranking member of the Ku Klux Klan. So that's just a little hook for you. Once you read that letter, what I want you to do is, using PIA formatting, answer the questions, these 3 questions, thinking about the author's perspective or bias when writing. And then you'll be submitting those assignments here. And then finally, the last thing that you're going to do this session is some survey questions. So after all the reading and researching you've done so far, you may have a pretty good idea on why Martin Luther King was so influential in our world, but you're limited to just your ideas on why his life's important. So for this part of the research process, we're going to take an informal survey to gather some other viewpoints and try to answer our core research question, which is, remember, how is Martin Luther King influential in our world? So what you're going to do is you are going to first review this link on what makes a good survey question. And in the discussion, you're going to suggest at least 2 well-worded questions that could be included in the survey. And then what you're going to do is, kind of like we did in session 1, you're going to go back and like 2 questions that you thought were the best ones. And these questions that receive the most likes will go into the class survey that we are going to be distributing next week to our friends and family. So I'm going to be creating, you're going to be creating the questions, I'll create the survey, and next week we're going to be distributing this survey to our friends, our families, our co-workers, and we're going to be asking them questions about the research question, how is Martin Luther King influential in our world today? So again, you're going to be developing 2 well-worded questions. And if you need help with that, the link is right there. So that is going to be the end of our session. Looking ahead, we're going to be continuing our research process. And you can see here's our process so far, what we did in session 1, what we did in session 2, and then in the next session, we are going to finish up our research process. If you have any questions this week, please let me know. I'm happy to help, and have a fantastic week.